is going to be recorded. So those of you on the call right now, you will get a file after this that has the PDF of all the slide deck and the recording, both of those. So you can always play it back if you need to. So thank you, Diane, for hitting record for us. So today we are going to talk about chart your course, grant calendars, and budget planning made simple. Thankfully, the two that are on here today, I already know you both. So this is great. I'm happy to have you guys. As you know, my name is Tabitha Freeman. I am the Director of Partnerships and Grants for Encompassing Education. I'm going to lead us through some easy ways today to organize and manage grants, specifically federal grants through the IDOE. This presentation applies to both new grant administrators, or even if you have a couple years underneath your belt or several years underneath your belt. I'm going to share with you some good tips, tricks, and some resources today, some freebies, so you can use those along your journey. So again, thanks for joining, and let's jump right in. So as we jump in, before we get started, I want to make sure we go over a couple norms. I'm going to make sure that we start and end on time today. Diane is going to be our moderator today, as I said, so she will make sure that sometimes, you know, I can start talking and get into this stuff that I'm really passionate about. So she will make sure that we start and end on time today. I ask you to take a learning stance throughout today. We want to make sure that we are all participants. I appreciate those of you who are on the call. We have some opportunities for questions and answers and things like that. So just being very engaged today. A couple times we're going to ask you to pause and reflect, just to take that opportunity to honor that learning process. Really quick, just take that moment. We know that when we're on this, you know, virtual platform, we want to take a minute to make sure that we reduce any environmental distractions, make sure we're ready to learn. And then also, if you could, I love seeing everyone. So if you are able to turn your camera on, we would really appreciate that. I know that when I present, or even when I'm teaching, you know, I always like to read the room. So that makes it great for me and a better experience for all. So thank you so much. And then on the right side here, you can see that I've asked you to introduce yourself there in the chat. Diane is going to be our chat guard today, I guess you would say. She's going to manage that for me. So if you would, we would love to know your name and where you currently work, what district you're with. And then also, if you want to put in your title in there, I didn't put that on the slide, but we would love to know what your official title is as well, because I know that some of you may be a little bit into grants and some of you just heavy in grants. So it's good for me to know for future reference as well. Let's see. Yeah, so we already know, those of you who joined in just a little bit late, this is recorded. You'll make sure that you get those slides and the recording after this presentation. And then we're going to go on to the next slide then. Who doesn't like to start with a freebie, right? So here's your first freebie. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, or if you are part of our newsletter, you may already have this. If not, I want to push this out to you. This is Federal Grant Management 101, just the basics. So this is some general information with resources that can support you along the way through your grant management journey. The link there at the bottom takes you to a PDF, and it's just a lot of best practices when it comes to federal grants and managing those grants. I think it's 4 pages, and it just goes over some general to-dos, checklist, the grant life cycle. So if you have, after you get these slides, I recommend that you click on that link and download that for free. And then also, like I said, our monthly newsletter. Some of you may already get this. If not, this is a great resource as well. We offer this monthly, so feel free to sign up for this. It provides several resources, not just among my expertise with grants, but also my colleagues with ELA, math, secondary math, curriculum instruction, leadership and coaching, and then some school culture and SEL as well. So you'll get some freebies there as well. All right, so let's jump right in. So these are going to be our learning targets today, and you all will leave with learning how to organize your grant calendars with key milestones, deadlines, and essential tasks for successful grant management. You're going to learn how to have insights into simplifying your budget planning process. So how do we fund the plan, right? We want to make sure that we're funding the plan, not planning the funds. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. You're going to be able to learn how to create working budgets that ensure accurate financial and projection and cost allocations. That's my favorite. And then how to maintain real-time balances for effective grant management. So within those working budgets, you're going to have real-time balances. So, if you're working side by side with a treasurer, that's another way, since you have those real-time balances, a check and balance for you and the treasurer and whatever program they're using for their allocations as well. Okay. So as an introduction, as a grant administrator or program administrator for your district, it is super imperative that you have great organizational skills. A lot of the grant administrators, new grant administrators that I work with, they know a lot of the ins and outs of some object codes and how to write the grant, but they're just consumed with how to organize it with all of their other duties. And so I want to share a couple things with you today about just organizing those grants. Organizing a grant calendar ensures that grant proposals are submitted on time and meet all the requirements. We want to make sure that we meet every deadline that there is. We know that if we miss a deadline, then we miss opportunities. Simplifying the budget process and planning process allows for creation of clear, realistic working budgets that guarantee your accurate financial projections and proper cost allocations. And so what I mean with that is that sometimes when we don't have, when we have a lot going on, maybe we have principals that are asking for funds and we have the district level needs, sometimes that can get cumbersome. So we want to make sure that we simplify those projects and programs to make sure that the activities are aligned with the priorities of the needs of our schools and our districts. And then maintaining real-time balances. I talked about this a little bit. It ensures effective grant management by providing up-to-date financial information, and it helps you make informed decisions. So when, as grant administrators, I know I was just working with someone last week that was saying, well, my high school principal's asking for this, my elementary principal's asking for this. And if you don't have those real-time budgets, especially when you're closing out grants towards the end of the year, that can make it difficult to expend those funds because you don't know exactly how much you have left. Especially there's another time where that's super important is when you're getting invoices. So if you're not maintaining real-time balances and then you get invoices and then you're in the hole and then you got to figure out where you're going to pull that extra fund from. So maybe that's from rainy day, maybe that's from your local budget somewhere in the education fund. It just eliminates all those issues. So together, these practices streamline grant administration and they increase efficiency. They improve the chances of securing and successfully managing grants. And then also it makes your job easier. I have a lot of people that say, all that front work, though, that's a lot of work. But I promise it pays off in the end when you're not scrambling to get out of the hole that you've overspent, or to not be able to fund something that your principals really want through the summer when you're closing out grants. So being proactive versus reactive is super important with grant management. And so with that, we're going to start with grant calendars. We're going to jump into grant calendars. I don't know how many of you currently have a treasurer that works side by side along with you or the size of your district, but just overall best practices, grant calendars, they ensure timely submissions of grant applications and budgets. They help in tracking progress and meeting deadlines. They improve coordination among your team members. And they reduce the amount of time you spend on grants overall, allowing you to focus on those other duties. I know for myself, not only was I the program administrator for all the grants, but I also was the curriculum director. So I was in charge of the teaching, the learning, the textbook rental, all of these other things that I really needed to pare down and make sure that I could focus on these things organizational wise so I could get to those other to-dos. If you are collaborating with your treasurer, if you're collaborating with your principals, grant calendars are super important because when you're creating time that you need to meet with them to identify their needs or their funds or allocations, you can do that through a grant calendar. The district for Title I, you have district admin and your school level budgets. So these are all people you need to collaborate with. In addition to all stakeholders, you have to make sure that you meet with the school board. You have to make sure that you meet with parents. All of these things I put into a Google Calendar. And on another addition is your SPED director. If you have a SPED director and there is an activity that you want to fund that also includes the special ed population, that would be something you want to put in your Google Calendar so you can meet with them and plan that ahead of time. And I say Google Calendar because that's what I preferred. I think it's just easy. You can use it to collaborate and use a shared calendar. And I'm going to show you that here in a second. So as I said, Google Calendar for me worked. However, you have a plethora of options you could use there. But you have digital tools and you have physical tools. So with the Google Calendar, I would create a calendar outside of my own Google Calendar and share that and include my treasurer. That way she could see any time that I'm amending a grant, she could see that, or even if we had a meeting that we needed to be together. We could always see each other's due dates, no matter if it was programmatic or fiscal. That is the number one thing, is that in a grant role or when you are managing grants, to have a great relationship with your treasurer. And one of those is just that open communication of that Google Calendar. Another digital tool, if you're not used to using project management boards, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but Trello is a task management system. It's for team collaboration and tracking. It's free. It's like sticky notes on steroids. So if you are a digital person, that helped me tremendously. For Trello, I would put things in there that are more my duties or tasks rather than due dates. Like if my to-dos for that day was XYZ, that's what I would put in Trello. Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets for tracking milestones and budgets. We're going to talk about budgets on the next section, so we'll come back to that. And then, of course, the physical tools, your wall calendars, your paper notebooks, planner notebooks. We all know these. So to help you get a better idea of how to plan ahead for deadlines and things, I would use, and this is just my own personal preference, I would use a planner for my long-term deadlines. So then I could look ahead easily. I carried it with me everywhere. And then my short-term deadlines would be on my digital calendar, my Google shared calendar. And the reason being those are the things that, one, I need to collaborate with people, because if I write something in my planner, my principal, my elementary principal, is not going to have access to that. So those daily tasks are the ones that I would put in my Google Calendar online. So say, for instance, I needed to meet with the elementary principals to discuss school level budgets. That would go in my Google Calendar, where the deadline for Title I would go in my paper calendar. So I hope that makes a little bit better information how I used dual paper and digital. And again, your preference, but I do like to use both. And so setting up your Google Calendar, you want to make sure you choose a calendar tool. Again, I like Google Calendar, but you can use Outlook. You want to identify key dates. So application deadlines, encumbrance deadlines, expenditure deadlines. All deadlines go in the paper and the digital. We never want to miss those. You also will have dates in there maybe that you have for monthly reimbursement dates for your board or your treasurer. Any grant announcements maybe that the IDOE has released. We know that sometimes we always have the regular, I always call regular, your Title I, your Title II, all of those types of grant due dates. But if there is a one-off grant, you want to make sure that you put that in your Google Calendar as well and on the paper calendar. If you are not familiar with the grant side-by-side document that the IDOE puts out, you want to make sure that you do use that and you utilize that. I'm going to share that with you right now, and I'm going to show you why. So on here on the screen, you can see that on these side-by-sides, they have this, click right here, this column, this row that talks about important dates. At the first of the year in the summer, I use all these dates and I plug them right into my paper calendar and my digital calendar. Because those are the ones that we really want. Those are, when we talk about tight and loose, these are tight. We want to make sure that we get those in there. So, if you have not looked at this, you want to make sure that you look this over this summer. And I would say as soon as possible, to make sure that you get those in there. And again, it is on our slide deck that you'll be getting today. So you'll have that link in there in case you need it to save to a bookmark or something. And then also reoccurring and non-recurring tasks. I talked about with your board members. I don't know how many of you, but I know that I was expected to share grant updates. And so anytime that I would have a board meeting that was needing to, talk about, our school level budgets or the balance or maybe even changes that we've made with contracts, those also went on my calendar and in my paper calendar. And then your shared calendar, you can also assign responsibilities. So I highly recommend all of the grant administrators that I work with. I always tell them to meet with their treasurer every 2 weeks and set up that reoccurring meeting for every 2 weeks. What that means is that every 2 weeks, you're going to be meeting with them to determine needs. Maybe you need to talk about some amendments. Maybe they got an invoice and they don't know what it's for. So the agenda may change. You may not always have the same agenda. In fact, you probably won't with determining on that grant cycle. But you want to make sure that you have some team members also that you're collaborating with through that grant calendar, because we know that it takes a village to make sure to run these grants and get them expended as needed. All right, some best practices that I've always told the people that I work with, and even me as a grant administrator, is to start early. So I just shared that side by side. As soon as possible, I would start researching and looking over that. You want to make sure you begin preparations well ahead of the deadlines. Stay organized. You want to keep all documents and notes in one place, but several places. And I say that, I'm going to come back to that in a second. You want to communicate effectively. Make sure all your team members are informed and engaged. If you are having school level budgets and the principals are identifying how they want to spend those, what deadline you need to give them a deadline as to when you need those funds appropriated. Otherwise, they're going to leave for the summer and they're going to say, oh, well, I didn't get those done. And then you're going to have to write that grant this summer and it's not going to be ready. Review and revise regularly. You want to make sure that you're going back, checking balances, checking how you wrote the pre-app. You have principals that maybe request maybe they want to purchase something for STEM and that wasn't written in the pre-app. You're going to have to go and review or revise that and tell the principal that's not allowable because that's not what we put in the pre-app. So you want to make sure that you're constantly looking back at those. On that staying organized, this is a big thing that I talk about to other grant administrators is keep your documents in one place, but several places. And what that means is that in Google Drive, I don't know how many of you use Google Drive, but in Google Drive, I would create a folder and it would be grants. And then in that grants folder, I would have Title I folder, a Title II folder, a Title III folder, a Title IV folder, and I would keep everything in those folders. However, that's not the only place that I keep those. I also keep those in saved on my desktop on a hard drive, because you and I both know that when the DOE, when you get audited and for some reason something isn't in the drive or something's not on that desktop, you have it always saved on a hard drive. So you have the digital part of that and then also the hard copies. In my office, I would always keep one file drawer with all of my current active grants and then all of my closed grants. And that being because if I needed to purchase, say, for instance, Brain Pop, and I was talking to that representative and they had sent me an invoice and I thought, man, I can't remember exactly how much I paid for that invoice 5 years ago because I paid for multi-year quote, I can always go back and I can pull that and reference that. Or it may be something as simple as, well, how much did I pay this past year in IA salary? I go back to that one that's closed out. So I never let, probably, I think I kept 5 years worth in my office and then we stored them somewhere else after that. But I always kept my active and my closed grants separate. Something else that's just a small tip is I would always keep any grants. I got a little file thing that kept on my desk, and any grants that were active for that particular school year as well, and that I needed to do work on that week, I would put them on my desk. If you're like me, as a curriculum director, which I did a lot of assistant superintendent role type things too, I always had a lot of fires coming in my door, and I would obviously get pulled to something else. I wanted to make sure that I still got to that grant, and if it's right there visibly in front of me, I wouldn't forget about it. I put on the bottom here, this is one of my, I would say, my top tips, the ratio of 1 to 100,000. What that is if you have, for every $100,000 that you are managing, you need at least 1 hour a week to that. So if you have $400,000 worth of grants, you need to spend at least 4 hours a week managing those. And that can look completely different how you're managing those in those 4 hours. Those 4 hours may be, the first week of May, you are just, overseeing the grants in checking balances. Are they being expended? What is all encumbered? What are the current allocations? Some light work. Then some weeks you may have 4 hours where you just spend that whole 4 hours amending the grant. It may take you that long to amend that grant. So for example, I was just working with a grant administrator the other day, and they were asking me, how do you keep track? I'm just running out of time. And I said, well, how many hours are you committing to your grant work every week? And they're like, well, I'm not really sure. Well, that was the first problem, because you should know how much time, if you're managing grants and other duties, you should be able to look at your calendar and know how much time you're putting towards that. That was actually last month. And I told him, you have $800,000 worth of funds you're managing. So that should be about 8 hours a week that you're managing. So the next month I went back to him, and he was saying, I'm still behind. I didn't get this stuff done. And I said, well, I haven't seen you in 4 weeks. So you had technically 32 hours of grant work. How did you spend that 32 hours of grant work? And, he told me a couple of things. I know a lot of you probably going through the same stuff, with the, he had to do the, what is it? The number 4 data collection for ESSER 3. And so he said that took up a lot of my hours. And so your hours of what you do during those hours will change, but the amount of hours should really be $1 to $100,000 to be able to meet every other job duty that you have. Okay. I don't know how small this is for you guys. I hope you guys can see this. So I just wanted to share an example of what my grant calendar would look like, how I manage this. So again, this is my grant calendar. In the Google Calendar settings, I would share this with my treasurer and anybody else. So if you're in a large district and you have, maybe you're running Title I and maybe your principal is running Title II, I would share that with them. Anybody that works in grants and or the treasurer department needs to have this shared calendar. So as a prior, you can tell I'm a prior elementary school teacher. I love to color code. That helps me tremendously. So forgive me if you're secondary and you're like, yep, that's a typical elementary teacher, but that's just how I work. So you can see here, red, I always had for my Title I work. My blue was my Title II. I'm trying to see this too because it's small for me. And then, my Title IV was purple. So anytime I look at my calendar, I would know exactly what I'm working on. The next tip that I think I would tell you is when you are working on grants, you have several grants that overlap each other. Your title grant is 15 months long. Your Title II grants are 27 months long. And so you are constantly managing multiple grants at the same time, even within the same, realm. So you have Title I. You can see there on Monday, the 1st, I have in there, what do I have in there? I'm trying to see because it's small. I have 4125. That is the program number. So anytime in this grant calendar, it is a super, super top tip to always start with the program number, because that is the grant that's coming up for next year. Those program numbers are given to you by the IDOE. And then you can see on Tuesday, the work that I'm doing there, but you can see 4124. That is the title grant that's getting ready to be closed out this year. And so you want to make sure that you're identifying which title grant you're specifically working on. So then those that you're sharing this calendar with, they will know that as well. For example, Title II, there you have the 6844, but you also have a 68. If you're a grant administrator right now, you know that you also have a current 6845 because Title IIs are worth 20 are go for 27 months. And you're getting ready to write a third one, 6846, for the next school year. So always use those program numbers when you're creating those to-dos in your calendar as well. Let me see if there's anything else on my notes that I want to share with you on that. I don't think so. Okay. And you can see there that, oh yeah, there was one more thing I want to share. You can see there I put in the board agenda or the board meeting. I always put those in my calendar as well and put in there what the program number. So I'm going to share with them how I'm closing out 4124, that title grant. Another top tip I would tell you is I always use 5 buffer days. And so what I mean by that is on there on the 30th, you can see pre-app is the due date. And those are all in caps. If I put something all in caps, that is the due date by the IDOE. That is the true due date, I say. 5 days prior to that in my calendar, this is a screenshot, so I won't be able to show you this, but 5 days on the 25th, I put that was due. The pre-app is due. And the reason being is you always want to put, a buffer week or buffer days. For me, it was usually about 5 days that I felt comfortable with. Because if you have extenuating circumstances or a family emergency or something like that, this allows you to have a little bit of flexibility. So my goal was to turn it in on the 25th. If I turn it on the 25th, that's great, good to go. But if something happened and I needed a couple days, I knew that I had those couple of days, and then I would put that in there as cap. So that would be my identifier as the true due date. Hopefully that's clear. Clear as mud, right? Okay. All right. So the last part of our managing organizing grants with calendars and digital tools is project management boards. So I talked a little bit about this before. It's the sticky notes on steroids, we say. So if you have never used a project management board, I would highly recommend one. There are several, Trello, I can name Trello, there's Asana. Both of those are free. They allow you to collaborate with others, track management activities, maintain deadlines. It also can act as a repository for documents. So I want to show you real quick what this would look like. So you can see here, this is what a Trello board looks like. Of course, I, again, color code everything. So, my grants general work that applies to pretty much the plethora of grants, right? So writing that pre-app, we know that the pre-app encompasses all your title grants. So I've color coded that in red. The comparability report is something that encompasses all the grants. So that's in red. So how you create this is you have these tiles. So I'm going to move this guy right here. So you have this tile that you can move back and forth. Can you guys see when I move that back and forth, Diane? Can you see that when I'm moving that?
No, we cannot. I'm not sure why. It looks like it is. We'll try again, but it looked like it just wasn't keeping up in real time.
Yeah.
Yes, now we can.
Okay, so you can move these tiles to however you want to organize. You can also move the cards. So as I show you across here, this is my grants general work. This is my Title I, 4124. Again, always listing the program number first because we're closing out 4124 for this year soon, and yet we're getting ready to write the 4125. So those are going to be running together. When you slide, there's a slider down at the bottom here, and you can scroll across here so you can see. And this is just, I just made this as a mock for you guys. Just put in a couple things here. You'll probably have way more cards than what I do, but you can see your Title II, this Title II and this Title II. We've got almost 3 Title IIs coming up for this time of year. And then your Title IV. The great thing is over here on the side, you can see that success. And so it really, you know, when you're checking off, you know, your sticky notes or you're throwing away sticky notes and you get that gratification of, yes, I got that done. This works that way too. So you can, you know, if I'm finishing up and I did my Title IV appropriations, I can drag this card over here and drop it right there in my success. So very simple. You can make these very fancy. This one is pretty basic right now, just so I could show you. But you can make where it says success, the cards, you can put them colors, you can put pictures, you can put emojis, all kinds of things in there. So if you are not using Trello, I would say, oh, I'm drawing on there now. Well, don't know how that happened. That's a new function I didn't know I had. So if you have not used that, I would greatly recommend that. All right, let me get back here. Okay, so Trello, and as you can see on the bottom of that right screen, I do have the link there. So when you get these slides, if you need to get in there, it's right there, quick access. Okay. So that is our, wow, we're great on time. It's 1:30 exactly. So I want to take a moment right here. If you have written down any questions or thoughts or in the chat, we're going to check on those right now. And this is particularly over the calendars or project boards. If you have any questions or comments. Diane, did we have anything in there?
So we didn't have any questions in the question area or in the chat area. However, I do encourage you, as Tabitha continues, if you have questions, if you want her to stop and you want her to answer something real time, you can use the little functionality at the bottom of your screen that you can raise your hand. You could drop it in the chat, and we can answer that when we're on a particular slide. Bill did drop into the chat a helpful bit of information that there is the ability to go on to LinkedIn Learning and have a training on Trello boards. So if you're interested in learning more there, I know YouTube also has a great few little short snippets of training that you could learn more about Trello boards and all the functionality there. So no questions unless anyone wants to drop anything in there, or if you want to unmute yourself, Tabitha would love to answer questions before she moves on to the next section.
Yeah, definitely.
I would just make a comment. Just thank you, because it makes me feel like, okay, I might be doing some things okay. Because you're just trying to piece together how to make this all work. I'm 5 years in to being the grant manager and assistant superintendent here, and everything you're saying hits home. So thank you. It's very helpful and reaffirming.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Julie, for sharing that. Yeah. I know that even several years in, you know, we all still need, you know, with all the things that IDOE is putting on us, it's just, we need just help managing, right? Organizing it all to, yeah, you are not alone, Julie. I promise. Awesome. All right. Okay, let's see. We're going to jump into budget planning. This is my favorite. I'm excited to share some free budget spreadsheets with you guys. So one of the things is, as a grant administrator, you know, you fill out that pre-app, which you guys are, I'm sure, working on now or getting ready to, and it is cumbersome. And trying to wrap everything in how you're going to braid those funds, how you're going to meet certain activities within certain school level or grade bands or schools, maybe the high school. So if you are to the point of your budgeting planning process, congratulations, because you have made it through the pre-app narrative. So that's something to celebrate. And then, so the next step is, well, where do I start? Preparing activities and the cost and the budgets can be a little cumbersome, but I promise, again, proactive versus reactive. So here you will gain insights into simplifying the budget planning process for grant proposals. You're going to learn to create working budgets that ensure accurate financial projections. You're going to understand how to allocate costs effectively within grant budgets, and then maintain those real-time financial balances for better grant management. Anytime that I am, and Julie would know this as being 5 years in, the Title I app is not very user-friendly. You know, if you're in there and you find that user-friendly, hit me up, because I'd love to know some tips and tricks. But that is the whole reason why I started creating working budgets, because I was not able to go into the Title I app and make changes or know some what's the word that I want to look for? Like line items. So individual items that I want to spend money on is in, if you know the Title I budget, you know, it's in supplies, and you have, you know, maybe $100,000 in supplies, but you don't know, maybe 20 of that went to this and 15 of it went to this and 5 of it went to this. And, you know, so you're running multiple lines of just supply lines that you need to know what those line items are. And so that's what helped me, that's what made me want to create these working budgets. So before we get into that, I want to steps to creating working budget. You need to make sure that you know the overview and purpose of your specific grant. So if you are working specifically with Title II and you're creating a working budget for Title II, that is all about professional development. So you want to make sure that you know those, the purpose and the allowable expenses for each particular grant. I have put the link in there for the Title Grants Handbook. That handbook will give you everything and anything as for what is allowable to purchase through each, through each title grant to make sure that they align with those purposes. So I'm not going to click on that. You guys can use that after I give you this, but just so you know, it is in there. The other thing about your working budgets, I was just talking about the supply line. So in my working budgets, I always break down everything by the, what I would call the object code line. So whether that be personnel, whether that's stipends, salaries, wages, benefits, equipment, you have supplies, you have technology, you have professional development, you have travel. All of those are those individual lines that you will see in your Title I pre-app or in your Title I app, and more, right? But those are some larger ones that we usually always see that we're trying to put some funds into. So that's how I broke them down. You want to make sure that you're at least estimating cost. Estimating cost is great, but what is better is if you actually have a real quote. When you're building budgets, if you have an estimated cost of $3,000 and then the quote actually comes in for $2,800, then you're going to have to do an amendment for that. So try to get as many quotes as you can before building your budgets. And that is, of course, funding the plan, right? If you know that you're wanting to do something, then you're knowing that you need to go get that quote for it. It's not that you get the money and then you go get the quote. That's not the way that we want to do it. One, that's just the impact of the grant doesn't work as well when it's like that. So it's just not best practice. When you're building these working budgets, you want to make sure that you're always staying reasonable, allocable, and necessary. We know those are RAN, the Title I, the IDOE, our SEA will tell us that over and over again. Is it reasonable, allocable, and is it necessary? And you will know that through that Title I handbook, because that, again, is serving the purpose and the overview of that grant. You want to ensure that you have allocated district admin expenses and school level budget appropriately and accurately. So that is specifically to Title I. As many of you know, if you've been doing this for a while, you have to meet that PPE for each individual school. And so with this working budgets, you'll be able to do that. Your Title IV. So you have your ABC buckets that you have to make sure that you meet. Unless you applied for a waiver and have that kind of open right now, you still are warranted to those ABC buckets. And then, of course, you want to review and revise the budget periodically. So let's jump in to checking out some of these. So I just love that little guy. Let's get organized. So let's organize. So who doesn't love getting organized? That's one of my favorite things. So as a grant administrator, one of the things that I struggled with was determining how to use multiple grants for one purpose. So if you, thanks Diane. Diane will link these in the chat. So if you want to click on those links as we go and I talk through them, that's great as well. I am going to share it on my screen and show you some things, but you can definitely open it up if you would like. Let's just click on this. So here we go. So as you are building your, this is encompassing all grants, okay? We're talking about braiding funds here. So a lot of the times I have school districts say, well, I really want to do XYZ, but my Title I, I don't have enough money to pay for XYZ out of Title I. And so, you know, we talk about how other grants can support those activities, and that is what we call braiding funds. So for example, here, I just put an example here for you, and you guys will get this. So when you guys click on that link, it will force you to make a copy. And I did that on purpose. So then it's yours. You have it forever. So if I want to do something right now, we know SOR is, you know, super big with the state right now. A lot of schools are trying to find funding and professional development to support their teachers in this work. And so I just put this in here as an example, as one of the activities. So name of activity would be the SOR professional development. You can see there my Title I. Let me get there real quick on this screen. So you can see here my Title I is, I have here description of the activity and then the cost. So I'm going to use Title I to support on-site SOR training for all certified staff at all 4 elementary schools. I've already gotten that quote, and the consultant has told me it's going to be $8,000. But I also want to train my IAs, but I don't have more than $8,000 in my Title I grant. So I'm going to use my Title II grant, which I know is for professional development, and I'm going to train all of my instructional assistants or non-certified staff at those elementary schools through this grant. And then there's the additional cost, and I can pay for that because I have that money per se for this example. And then, but in addition to that, I really want to do a book study with all of my staff, but I don't have any more than $2,500 in my Title II. So I'm going to use my Title IV that I have a waiver for, and I'm going to use that to purchase those books for SOR practices. And that cost would be $1,000. And so you could go through this before you start writing any of these individual budgets. Is I start writing in what activities are the things that I want to prioritize this year for what the need is in my district. And this is the difference between planning the funds and funding the plan. I don't get the money and then say, okay, well, I've got $100,000. What am I going to do? Nope. I say, these are the needs dependent upon my strategic plan, dependent upon the data that I have from, you know, assessments, all of those dependent upon, you know, what my principals have told me. I'm going to start putting those activities in this so I can start budgeting that out. And that is the key to making sure that you are making impactful work in your district. We see, you know, as a prior, you know, employee of the IDOE, you know, I worked in school turnaround, and a lot of the schools that made the difference was because they were using their grant funds in purposeful ways that made an impact, not the school districts who got the money and then just found ways to spend it. So we want to make sure we're making an impact. And this is a starting point for that. I'm going to stop sharing that one. We're going to go back up. I'm going to just totally just click stop sharing. Here we go. Perfect. Okay. So next, and yeah, as Diane said, as we go through these, if you have any questions, you know, you can put them in the chat or, you know, unmute yourself. That's totally fine too. We got a small group today, so that's nice. So the Title IV working budget, we're going to click on that one. You can see here. The Title IV working budget is, again, name of activity. You're going to have a cost or stipend. You're going to have your benefits column in case you're paying a stipend. You're always going to have to build in those benefits. Number of staff. I have then my grand total. And then on my Title IV budgets, I like to put in there my expenditure code and my object code. And then we have notes here and those. So if we just go through line 2 real quick, I know that one of the things that my principals at middle school, high school have requested is that they want Newsella this year for their social studies teacher. And so that is one thing I'm going to fund through Title IV. The cost of that is $3,000. There are no benefits. I don't need to put number of staff. So that total is $3,000. If you look up here in the very top left at the title of this, I have, of course, my program number, 5822. Then, of course, if you work closely with your treasurer, you're going to start memorizing the numbers for the line item. So, you know, you're going to have 5822-11000-656, which is a technology software line, and then whatever school number that goes in. So not only do you know the amounts, but you also know what line number that is when you're writing those POs. If you're in charge of writing POs or request of purchases, you will have those lines already put in there. And so these right here are just drop-down boxes that then you could put. So maybe it's in process right now, like I'm working on getting that quote, or maybe I need to write the PO tomorrow. And then you have your paid and your partially paid or purchased. So the delineation between paid and purchased, your purchased is encumbrance. You have encumbered that. You have purchased that. Okay. So you would, on your allocations from your treasurer, you would see that it's encumbered. And we all know that we have encumbrance deadlines and expenditure deadlines. Once that is received, then I would go in and I would click paid, and then I would know that is expended. So then when I go meet with my treasurer every 2 weeks, I can go through this and I can say, hey, I just want to make sure that you have this. We've already paid it. It expended. And she'll show, yep, that's been deducted from that line. We're good to go. That's at a zero balance. And so here I just put some other ones in that you guys can see. This one here, I wanted to show you about the stipends and the costs. So you have your STEM lab. You're going to provide a stipend for your tech integration specialist for the year. Maybe they get paid, $2,000. You have the $320. Benefits is usually around 16%. So that's just a good range that I use when I'm calculating this. If you are not, that can change depending upon your district and what you guys offer in benefits and how much you pay. So if I were you, I would ask your treasurer, what is the percentage of benefits with your TERF, your PERF, medical, dental, whatever they take, what is a general, they can give you just a general number. And so at my district, it was 16%. So I would know, I would take 16% times that 2,000, and that's where I would get the 320. So then I could then give this as my total. And the reason doing that then is that I don't need to then wait on my treasurer to tell me this is how much it would be for this staff or stipend. I can already proactively put it in this working budget and know exactly how much the funds are or how much I need to allocate to that. And the same thing here. So the expenditure code, which is different because it's a stipend, and then the object code, again, is different. And then you could, choose here what you want. Okay. All right. Then the grant tracker. So the grant tracker is one that I want to share today. This is pretty simple, but it keeps me well organized. You have, where are we at? Okay. So on this one, this encompasses all of your grants. And so on here, you have your, I just put some examples in here. So your Title I, you have your status. So again, I've put in some of these drop-down boxes. So maybe, right now your 23-24 should be approved already. And you should be getting ready to close that out. I always put in column C, the type of grant. Column D, you have the application, location or website. That's nice, especially if you're a district that is applying for several private grants. Maybe you're applying for Lilly grants, or maybe, Dollar General provides grants. I mean, there's tons of private grants that you could apply for. Several of these right now, though, just for this purpose, is the title. So the DOE, but you would want to put those other ones there. Your actions. So who did you speak to? These are kind of just notes. So on 5/23, I spoke to my specialist, and I want to make sure that I document that. Maybe I had a question, the application deadline, and then the date you submitted it, grant amount, your email contact for whoever that may be. Maybe that is your specialist for your federal grants. Maybe if you apply for a private grant, maybe a PLTW grant, then maybe you put, Britt Finnessy here, whoever your rep is for that. And then any notes there that you want to put additional notes just so you have them. And so through here, you can see that you have submitted, you have revisions needed. So just to explain all of these, how these criteria is, a new grant, it's just in there like you're waiting on a new grant. You can see these right here. That's just that's the code for if nothing's in there. Then I have submitted. You know what that means. Pending, maybe that's waiting. Maybe the, if you submit a title grant, that has to go through your specialist review and then it has to go to the PDA review. So you could put that there for pending. In progress is what I use when I am currently working on a grant, but I'm having to collaborate with somebody. So maybe I'm waiting on a principal to get back with me on something. That would be in progress. And then, I would go after in progress. I get it all done. It would be submitted. Then after it's submitted, maybe then it goes to the PDA or the specialist, then it's pending. And then they get back with me and they say, hey, you need to put in here the number of Chromebooks that you're going to purchase for this school building. So then I put in their revisions needed. And then they send it back like, yep, it's approved. That's the great news we always want to hear. And then, of course, once it's done, we have finalized. You can formulate this B column too to put all the finalized and done like down below. So then they're not at the top of your screen, and you still have access to them to know for if you need a historical point of view, but otherwise you could leave them up here as well. So that is the grant tracker. I'm gonna jump back in here. Okay. So those are the 3 things that I wanted to share today with the freebies. I have some other items that if you ever are in need of another working budget or something like that, you just can reach out to me. I'm happy to share with you others. Those are the 3 though that I wanted to just kind of walk you through so you know some thought process behind it. And then so the conclusion, we're making good time. Okay. So in conclusion, I just want to make sure that you all know, grant calendars, grant organizers, your project boards, those are all super important. Again, be proactive, not reactive. You're going to be able to have real-time balances on grants. You're going to be allowed to make informed decisions on your grant activities and not planning the funds, but fund the plan to be more impactful for your district and increase student achievement. You're going to ensure efficiency and accountability. You're going to allow yourself more time to do the other duties that you have to do in life when you're in this role day to day. And you're going to be well equipped to handle the complexities of grant management with confidence. If you are a new grant manager, that can be very daunting and you feel like you are drowning alone. And so know that when you're able to get ahead of things, that will give you more confidence when you're presenting to your board, when you're talking to your principals, when you're meeting with parents, these stakeholders. And then, of course, it'll save you time. So we all want in life, the gift of time. We all want that because, we don't want to be living in our office, all evening. So that is our conclusion. And then real quick, Diane, did we have any questions, or did anybody need clarification on any of those that I shared today, any of those documents?
There are no questions in the chat box, but if anybody wants to open their line and ask a question, you are welcome to do so.
I don't have a question, but I'm going to comment again because you've just done a great job, really great job. I added to my documents that look a little bit different than yours, but pretty much the same, very similar. One thing I added is action plans. Mm-hmm. Because what I found was I can get the grants, but implementing them is a whole another game. Like making sure people are staying current and you ask people to do things and how do you do that? So I started utilizing an action plan template to help myself keep moving in those 8 hours a week or however many that I'm spending on the grant, because I found that I was just continually just reorganizing, but I needed to move. I needed to say, how do we get to that next step? So that was very helpful to me. So I'm just throwing that out there as the next step for anybody who thinks that they need that, because that was something that was holding me up.
That's great feedback. Yeah. So Julie, can I ask a quick question? So when you created those action plans, in what format or what template did you do that? Did you do that in your spreadsheet, or did you make just a different document, or how did that work?
So they're on their own document, but they're a link in my spreadsheet, because in my spreadsheet, I have all of my grants, and then I have just like the date it was submitted and the date. I have all those things that you had. Just it looks different, but it has actually the same information. And then I have a line that just says action plans, and I have that line colored in a certain color so that I can get to it quickly. And the key for me in the action plan was everything's on a 30-day cycle. So if I'm meeting with like the school, we had the school counselor grant. So we would meet like once a month. Well, we knew we had just that 1 month, because then it made it seem less daunting to get everything done by, next July. That seemed long. But if we said, well, in the next 30 days, what can we accomplish in our grant that we said we were going to do? And so that was very helpful to just guide that conversation back. So just like I said, it's a tip. It kind of follows the pattern of strategic doing. If you've read that book, if you haven't or had that training, it's very good. It's worthwhile. But it just helps you to be like, okay, how do we move from having interesting conversations about all these great projects to let's get it done?
Yes, absolutely. I love that, Julie. That is so meaningful and so purposeful, right? Like,
yeah,
it's
been helpful. Game changer for me.
Super impactful. And you know what I love too is that you also color code. So yay to color coding.
I do color code. But this was great. Like, it was super good just to hear it. Like, it just really helped me to frame some things in a maybe a little different way. And I definitely saved your documents so that I could utilize maybe the best of those two worlds that I'm living in. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that, Julie. I'm so glad it was meaningful today. Okay. Well, because I want to, one of our norms was we're going to start on time and end on time. So, just a couple last slides here, housekeeping type things. If you need PGPs, we always do this with all of our sessions. You can scan that QR code once you get these slides and it'll generate that for you automatically. And then the last thing is, and this goes to Julie's point, is, getting on here and having discussions with each other. I have a GAIN, which is a Grant Administrator Implementation Mastermind group that's going to be starting June 6th. This is a small group of people that we meet monthly, once a month. And we talk about things that, maybe we're struggling with or share celebrations. We talk about some new maybe mandates from the IDOE and how we're handling those. It's a very small group, but very collaborative group, so we can support one another along this journey. But it's the first Thursday of every month from 10 to 11:30. So if you're interested in joining that with me, you can feel free. There is the link in the slides in the bottom, and also Diane put that in the chat. So thank you, Diane. But yeah, it's just, when you're out there and you're the only one in your district doing grants, sometimes you can feel alone. And so it's just a support group to help you feel like you're not the only one out there and to, help you get out of that office and not live there. Let's go to the next one. So as we close out, one other thing I want to say, I hope you're able to walk away from this session with one or two things maybe you want to try. By no means do you need to implement all of these resources that I shared today. My motto has always been go slow to go fast. And start small as a grant administrator. So, that's why I do have a Title I working budget and things like that, but I really want you to start small with the Title IV grants. We know Title IV and Title II are usually smaller amounts. So I just want to take a quick moment to recognize our encompassing education team, all of my wonderful coworkers. I know Bill's on here today. He's a great guy. And we had Tiffany, she had to leave early, but we, as Encompassing Education, we provide support to schools and non-for-profit organizations and private organizations. And we have several specialists on our team that provide specific expertise, especially pertaining to secondary math, ELA, curriculum and instruction, SEL, and school culture. And then, of course, you will also see our CEO and owner, Diane. She's also been our moderator today. She also leads a lot with leadership coaching. So if you have principals who need support in that manner, she also does that. And if you want to learn more about us, feel free to click on the link down below at the bottom. Once you receive these slides, we'd be happy to talk to you about any other support that you may need aside from grants. And then last, this is my contact information. Again, if anything arises and you would like to reach out to me or have questions, please feel free to do so. I just want to finalize today by saying thank you for attending and sharing your time with me. I know that you took today to learn more about grant management. I hope that you found something here today that is helpful and you can take back to your amazing work and practice. So thank you so much. And Julie, thank you again for sharing. We love when we can hear some feedback along the way. So that's it. Have a great afternoon, guys. Thanks for joining.
Thank you all. Have a great day.